Sometimes, when the autumn leaves turn gold and crisp, and the scent of wood smoke hangs heavy in the air, I find myself thinking about the things that truly matter. Not the stocks we watch, or the political squabbles on the evening news, but the quiet, unyielding strength of family, and the unexpected miracles life sometimes throws our way. It's a truth an older soul comes to know. Life's greatest challenges often arrive unbidden, and its most profound salvation can come from the most unlikely of sources. Fade in on a picturesque, almost idyllic scene. The setting sun casts long, golden shadows across a sprawling, traditional farmhouse nestled in the heart of rural Oregon. The air is thick with the sweet smell of drying hay and the distant, comforting low of cattle. Inside, the heart of the home, Sarah, 50s, warm, a touch weary but with an underlying resilience, is meticulously arranging a vase of late summer wildflowers on a rustic wooden table. Her husband, John, 50s, strong, quiet, with worry lines etched around his eyes, enters, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. The silence between them is not empty, but pregnant with unspoken concern. Their youngest, Lily, 8, bright-eyed, endlessly curious, is sketching furiously on the floor, surrounded by a rainbow of crayons. Their eldest, Ethan, 16, sullen, glued to his phone, a typical teenager but with a hidden sensitivity, slouches on the couch, headphones on, a world away. "Dinner's almost ready," Sarah says, her voice softer than usual. John nods, dropping the rag onto a hook by the door. "Tractors. Still acting up. Don't know how we're going to afford repairs with everything else." His gaze drifts to a stack of ominous-looking envelopes on the counter. The foreclosure notices, the unpaid medical bills from Sarah's recent grueling recovery from a mysterious illness that had plagued her for months, had become a constant, suffocating presence. This farm, their legacy, their very identity, was slowly slipping through their fingers. A low growl rumbles from beneath the table. Buster, a scruffy, medium-sized mutt of indeterminate breed with intelligent, soulful brown eyes, pushes his head out. He's been with the family since he was a pup, found abandoned on the side of the road, and has always been an integral, if sometimes unnoticed, part of their lives. He nudges Sarah's hand, then John's, sensing the unspoken tension. "Don't. A worry, boy," John mutters, ruffling Buster's fur absent-mindedly. "We'll figure it out." But his voice lacks conviction. The family sits down to dinner, the usual lively chatter replaced by a strained quiet. Lily recounts her day with enthusiastic if garbled details, but even her cheerful voice can't lift the gloom. Ethan remains absorbed in his phone, occasionally grunting in response to a question. Sarah watches John, her heart aching at the weight he carries. The farm, ravaged by unexpected blight for the past 2 seasons, coupled with Sarah's prolonged illness, had brought them to the brink. They had taken out loans, sold off equipment, but it was a losing battle. The bank had given them a final deadline, a week to make a substantial payment or lose everything. Suddenly, Buster lets out a sharp, insistent bark. He paces by the back door, whimpering, his ears perked. "What is it, Buster?" Lily asks, her attention diverted from her plate. John sighs. "Probably just wants out. He always does this when he hears a rabbit." But Buster isn't interested in going out. He continues to bark, his tone growing more urgent, his gaze fixed on the dense line of trees that bordered their property. He then races to the cellar door, scratching at it frantically. "Buster, stop it!" Ethan snaps, finally looking up from his phone. "You're being annoying." Sarah, however, feels a prickle of unease. Buster's never acted quite like this. He seems distressed. John, annoyed, rises. "Fine, I'll let him out." He walks to the back door, and as he reaches for the handle, Buster lets out a guttural, terrifying snarl, unlike anything they'd ever heard from him. He then lunges, not at the door, but at John, nipping at his trousers, trying to pull him away. "What in the world, Buster?" John exclaims, startled. At that exact moment, a low, ominous rumble vibrates through the house. It's not thunder, and it's too deep for a distant truck. The floorboards beneath their feet begin to tremble. The glass in the windows rattles violently. "Earthquake," Sarah whispers, her face paling. But Buster isn't reacting like it's an earthquake. He's still pulling at John, now barking wildly, frantically pushing him towards the cellar door. The rumbling intensifies, growing into a deafening roar. A faint, acrid smell, like something burning, begins to seep into the room. The lights flicker, then die, plunging the kitchen into sudden darkness. A primal fear, cold and sharp, grips them. "What's happening?" Lily whimpers, clinging to Sarah. Just as John is about to dismiss Buster's bizarre behavior, a terrifying crack echoes from outside. It's the sound of splintering wood, followed by a sickening groan. Through the gloom, they see a faint, flickering orange glow through the kitchen window. The glow grows, becoming brighter, more intense. "Fire!" Ethan shouts, his voice cracking with terror. The barn's on fire. The roar outside becomes a terrifying symphony of crackling flames and collapsing structures. Panic flares. John instinctively moves towards the back door, but Buster, with surprising force, throws himself against his legs, pinning him, then barks even louder, pointing his nose wildly towards the cellar door. "He wants us in the cellar!" Sarah cries, a sudden, horrifying realization dawning on her. The family, disoriented and terrified, stumbles towards the cellar door, guided by Buster's relentless nudging and barking. The heat in the kitchen is becoming unbearable, the air thick with smoke. Just as John fumbles with the latch, a tremendous crash shakes the house. A flaming beam from the barn, now a roaring inferno, smashes through the back wall of the kitchen, precisely where John had been standing moments before, if Buster hadn't stopped him. They tumble down the creaky wooden steps into the damp, cool darkness of the cellar, Buster scrambling down after them. The door slams shut above them, muffling the horrifying sounds of the fire, but not completely silencing them. They huddle together, gasping for breath, the smell of smoke still strong, their hearts pounding in their chests. Lily is sobbing quietly. Ethan is pale and shaking, and Sarah holds them both tight. John, his face streaked with soot, his eyes wide with shock, wraps an arm around Sarah. Hours pass in agonizing uncertainty. The roar of the fire eventually subsides, replaced by the ominous crackle of embers and the distant wail of sirens. Finally, a faint glimmer of light appears from under the cellar door. John pushes it open cautiously. The world above is a scene of devastation. The barn is a charred skeleton, smoking ruins where their livelihood once stood. But the house, miraculously, though smoke-damaged and with a gaping hole in its kitchen wall, still stands. And as the early morning light breaks through the haze, they see the extent of Buster's prescience. Their property is bordered by a small, dry creek bed, usually insignificant. But overnight, a flash flood, a freak weather event from a distant storm, had turned it into a raging torrent. Had they run out the back door, as their instincts dictated, they would have been swept away by the sudden, powerful current that had obliterated parts of the road leading to their farm. Buster, with his acute senses, had somehow detected both the approaching fire and the rising water, understanding the dual threat they faced. His frantic barks at the cellar door, his insistent pushing towards it, had been an animal's desperate attempt to warn them of the specific safe escape route. The fire department, alerted by neighbors who saw the smoke, arrives, dousing the last embers. John explains Buster's actions, still incredulous. The firefighters confirm the flash flood, shaking their heads in disbelief. "You were incredibly lucky," one of them says, looking at Buster with newfound respect. In the days that follow, the family is in a daze. The farm is devastated, their financial situation more dire than ever. But they are alive, and Buster, once just a beloved pet, is now their quiet hero. Lily showers him with extra treats and hugs. Even Ethan, who had once found Buster annoying, now follows him around, quietly scratching him behind the ears. John and Sarah look at Buster with a profound gratitude that words can't express. He had not just saved their lives, he had given them a second chance, a stark reminder of what truly mattered. One afternoon, as they stand amidst the wreckage of their barn, a car pulls up their long gravel driveway. A woman steps out. She's impeccably dressed with a stern, no-nonsense demeanor. It's Ms. Jenkins, the bank's representative, come to finalize the foreclosure. Sarah's stomach clenches. John steps forward, resigned. Ms. Jenkins, we understand. We need a little more time to gather our things. Ms. Jenkins, her face unyielding, begins to speak. Mr. Miller, as you know, the deadline has passed. We have no choice but to proceed with the... Suddenly, Buster, who had been lying quietly at John's feet, lifts his head. He walks slowly towards Ms. Jenkins, his tail giving a tentative wag. He then sits directly at her feet and, with a soft whimper, nudges her hand with his nose. Ms. Jenkins, caught off guard, looks down at the dog. She's clearly not an animal person, but there's something in Buster's eyes, a quiet, almost pleading intelligence, that makes her pause. "This is Buster," Lily says, stepping forward, her small voice surprisingly clear. "He saved us from the fire and the flood." Ms. Jenkins raises an eyebrow, skeptical. John and Sarah quickly recount the harrowing night, their voices filled with emotion as they describe Buster's incredible bravery and intuition. Ethan, for the first time, speaks up, adding details of how Buster had prevented his father from going out the back door. Ms. Jenkins listens, her expression slowly softening. She looks from the charred ruins of the barn to the still-standing house, then back to Buster, who is now resting his head on her foot, looking up at her with those soulful eyes. Something shifts within her. Perhaps it was the raw sincerity in the family's voices, perhaps the undeniable evidence of the devastation, or perhaps it was just Buster, a simple dog, reminding her of a deeper, more human connection. She clears, her throat a faint blush on her cheeks. I've never heard anything quite like it. She takes a moment, then reaches into her briefcase. Not for foreclosure papers, but for a tablet. "My office has a discretionary fund for extreme circumstances. We don't usually apply it to property loans, but given the extraordinary circumstances and your family's immediate need," she begins tapping on the tablet, "we can offer a 6-month deferment on your payments and a low-interest loan for rebuilding, given the verifiable disaster. It's the least we can do." The family stares at her, stunned into silence. It's an act of kindness so unexpected, so completely out of character for the rigid banking system, that it feels like a miracle. Tears well up in Sarah's eyes. John can only nod, his voice choked with emotion. Lily rushes forward and hugs Ms. Jenkins' legs, a small, genuine thank you. Ms. Jenkins, unaccustomed to such open affection, stiffens for a moment. Then a small, almost imperceptible smile touches her lips. As Ms. Jenkins prepares to leave, she pauses by Buster. She reaches down hesitantly and scratches him behind the ears. Buster leans into her touch, his tail wagging gently. "He's a remarkable dog," she says, her voice softer than they had ever heard it. "You're very lucky. The family rebuilds. It's hard work, but this time they're not fighting alone." Neighbors, hearing their story, come to help. The community rallies around them. The news of Buster's heroic act spreads, bringing unexpected donations and support. The farm, though scarred, slowly begins to heal, stronger and more resilient than before. And through it all, Buster remains their silent guardian, a constant reminder that courage comes in many forms, and that even in the darkest of times, hope can be found in the most unassuming of places. Life has a way of reminding us that what truly matters isn't the grand plans we make, but the small, often unacknowledged acts of goodness that ripple outwards, touching lives in ways we can never foresee. Sometimes all it takes is the unconditional love of a loyal companion, a single act of kindness from an unexpected source, to shatter expectations and spark a profound change, reminding us that even in the face of ruin, hope always finds a way to bloom